Tragedy approaches swiftly now. In that gale of longitude lurks a man with a pistol, bound by a blood oath to kill the king. He was a Croatian terrorist. A continent of immense historical grandeur and deep-seated rivalries has witnessed some of the most grisly and chilling assassinations of its royalty. From brutal betrayals to blood-soaked coups, these rulers met their ends in horrifying ways. Join us as we uncover the top 15 most savage and haunting assassinations of European monarchs, where betrayal and bloodshed sealed their fates. King Alexander I of Yugoslavia. While visiting Marseille, France, King Alexander I of Yugoslavia died in a horrific accident in 1934. He was assassinated during a state visit to France and Yugoslavia to enhance relations. Alexander and French Foreign Minister Louis Barthot were in a car when Vlado Chernozemski shot. Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization activist Chernozemski. It promoted Macedonia's independence. After throwing the bomb at the car, it exploded and killed everyone. Chernozemski shot King Alexander twice with a Mauser handgun, thus killing him swiftly. In the pandemonium, a French police bullet accidentally killed Barthot. Politicians pursued King Alexander for years. Following the November 1932 Croatian Ustaše rebellion, he believed his death was necessary to transform Yugoslavia. Under Benito Mussolini, the Italian government aided the Ustaše. This worsened relations with Yugoslavia. Mussolini believed that overthrowing Alexander would destabilize Yugoslavia. It would allow Italy to flourish without France. Newsreel footage showed the injured automobile driver. He was slouching against the brakes after the murder. The commotion was filmed, but not the gunfire. The crowd quickly restrained and battered Chernozemski before a French policeman killed him with his sword. The murder caused many political issues. Italian office buildings were protested because many Yugoslavs believed Italy was involved. In Hungary, the killers were trained and armed. French police found they traveled using phony Czechoslovak IDs. France allied with Britain. Therefore, the French government was afraid to officially criticize Mussolini. The murder strained France-Yugoslavia relations. King Richard III of England. Things were awful in 1485 when King Richard III was brutally killed. The 22nd August Battle of Bosworth Field saw Richard lead a mad horse charge against Henry Tudor, but his troops lost. Tudor supporters attacked Richard. According to old stories, Welsh foot troops with halberds beat him in the head multiple times. Many sides fought Richard III, and his bones exhibited many head injuries. The damage suggests he lost or had his helmet removed during the encounter. He was hit numerous times in the head, including a heavy blow to the base of his brain. So he was hit with heavy weaponry. The lack of defensive wounds on his hands and wrists suggests he was wearing armor. There are no defensive cuts. Therefore, these were presumably done after he died or lost his weapon. Cuts like the buttocks, one may have been body shaming. Richard's armor and garments were removed after the combat. Poet Polydore Virgil describes the naked person on a horse with drooping limbs. The Plantagenet reign ended when Richard III died walking through the streets. Emperor Nero of Rome. Death for Nero in 68. AD was spectacular and horrific. Nero secretly fled Rome in June 9, 68 AD, after the Senate declared him a public enemy. He fled to Phaon's residence outside the city, where he was secure. Due to his cruelty and excess, Nero died horribly as his authority diminished. Nero was terrified and frantic when the guards approached. He struggled to end his life at first. Nero even ordered a slave to demonstrate by doing it first. He hoped that would inspire him to do it. The assistants declined, so Nero had to cope with the outcome. Nero ultimately did take his own life. He pulled 2 knives from his pocket, but didn't use them. Epaphroditus, his servant, helped him perform the act in his final moments. Legend has it that Nero's dying words were remorse and pessimism about his life and situation. Despite losing power, Nero's journey continued. People soon speculated that he might be alive and reclaim his reign. Over the next 20 years, countless Nero impersonators appeared. Parthians and other outsiders supported these phony Neros to foment problems in Rome. Even though his last days were tumultuous and chaotic, some believed he would return. This reveals his complex and long-lasting rule. King Charles I of England. The death of King Charles I on January 30, 1649, was sad and significant in English history. Parliament was a major issue for Charles, king since 1625. His Catholic marriage to Henrietta Maria angered many English Protestants. Charles's conviction in king's divine authority made him a dictator. This doctrine held that God chose monarchs above the law. When war money was needed, he repeatedly dissolved Parliament and administered the country alone. The English Civil War, which Charles lost, was caused by the Parliament-Charles conflict. The High Court of Justice tried King Charles after his loss. The trial was controversial because many didn't think a king should be tried. Charles was found guilty fast, since he didn't plead or acknowledge the court's authority. The people dubbed him a despot, traitor, and enemy. Charles was executed after house arrest at St. James's Palace. His death was ordered by 59 commissioners. People gathered at Whitehall to observe his execution. Charles wore 2 shirts to appear calm because he feared his shaking would be viewed as panic. He was transported to the banqueting house truss at 2 in the afternoon. He instantly informed the gathering that he was changing his crown from corruptible to incorruptible. Putting his head on the block prepared him for the hit. One strike from the executioner's axe killed him instantly. People's reactions to his head held up to the audience were divided. His bleeding clothing was gifted by onlookers. His death ended the monarchy and established republican rule in England. Louis XVI of France. King Louis XVI died cruelly on January 21, 1793, during the French Revolution. The National Convention convicted him of high treason, and his death changed French and European history. The revolution overthrew Louis XVI, monarch of France from 1774. After the monarchy ended on September 21, 1792, Charles and his family were imprisoned in Paris Temple Prison. After declaring the French Republic, the convention discussed his fate. Everyone agreed that Louis plotted against the nation on January 15, 1793. They denied his request for more sleep time. However, he saw his family one last time. Jean-Baptiste Cléry, Louis' servant, awakened him up at 5 in the morning on January 21. He dressed, attended his last mass with his confessor, and wrote his will. He rode a green vehicle around Paris with troops at 9 a.m. The police were out in force, and many others gathered to watch. Louis arrived at the Place de la Révolution at 10 in the morning and was shown a gallows. The executioner, Charles-Henri Sanson, and his companions met him. He stripped and spoke to the crowd before being guillotined. The sword sliced off his head. Some in the crowd shouted, "Liberty and Republic," during the execution. Louis was buried swiftly in the old church of the Madeleine. In 1815, the Bourbon Restoration reburied him and Marie Antoinette in the Basilica of Saint-Denis. King Henry IV of France. King Henry IV of France was brutally murdered on May 14, 1610. The angry Catholic François Ravaillac hit the king in his carriage. After stabbing Henri multiple times, Ravaillac damaged vital blood vessels and murdered him. The nation was shaken by Henry IV's death. Born in 1553, Henry IV was raised Protestant. To join France, he became Catholic in 1593. He converted after years of Catholic-Protestant conflict. He granted Protestants religious freedom with the 1598 Edict of Nantes. Many staunch Catholics were furious. He was pious and born in 1577. He strongly opposed the Huguenots. He kept thinking Henry IV was trying to hurt the Catholic Church. Ravaillac had gone to the king earlier but failed to discuss his issues. He took matters into his own hands since Henri's military activities against Catholic armies insulted the Pope. Henry IV's carriage got caught in traffic on the murder day because carts blocked tiny roadways. Ravaillac recognized an opening. Ravaillac stabbed Henry as he peeked out the window to see what was taking so long. The vehicle promptly returned to the Louvre Palace, but Henry died from his injuries. Ravaillac was arrested and suffocated to question probable accomplices, but he claimed to have done it alone. He was executed in public on May 27, 1610. Henry IV's funeral was lavish. His heart was placed in a silver case, and he was interred at Saint-Denis Basilica. His tomb was torched during the French Revolution, but a memorial remains. King James II of England. English king. James II, who was born in 1633, had a dramatic end to his rule. For a lot of his childhood, he lived in exile after the English Civil War. He was Charles I's second son. When he got back to England in 1660, he led the Royal Navy as Lord High Admiral until 1673. James became a Catholic around 1669, which made things difficult when he became king in 1685. There was a lot of trouble during James II's rule. When he became king, he met a lot of opposition because he wanted to promote Catholic interests. He made the army bigger and put Catholics in important jobs, which scared many Protestants in Parliament. In 1687, he released the Declaration of Indulgence, which was meant to promote religious freedom, but was seen by many as favoring Catholics. Along with firing judges and government workers who didn't agree with his policies, this move made the conflict worse. When his second wife, Mary of Modena, had a son named James Stuart in June 1688, things got worse. A lot of Protestants were afraid that this event would lead to the establishment of a Catholic regime. In response, on November 1688, William of Orange, who was married to James's older daughter Mary and was a Protestant, began an invasion. Because the British Army and Navy didn't like James's rule, they switched their backing to William. Since James could lose his crown, he ran away to France. With French help, he tried to take back the throne in Ireland, but failed. In the end, he was defeated at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. He died at the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye in France in 1701. James II spent his last years as a refugee there. His son and grandson tried to bring back the Stuart line through rebellions, but none of them worked. James II's reign ended when he died in exile. Emperor Commodus of Rome. The shocking political plot that killed Emperor Commodus in 192 AD was a big deal. Commodus decided not to get married again after his wife, Crispina, was sent into exile and killed for adultery. Instead, he kept Marcia as his concubine. Marcia was also Commodus's advisor and had many boyfriends, including Eclectus, who was his chamberlain and whom she married while still seeing the emperor. For the Roman New Year in late 192 AD, Commodus planned to show up with gladiators instead of his normal purple robes. Marcia told him not to do this because she thought it would cause trouble. Because she made him angry, Commodus put Marcia, Eclectus, and the Praetorian prefect, Aemilius Latus, on a list of people who would be killed the next morning. That night, Commodus, Commodus's helper, gave Marcia the list of people who were going to be killed by accident. When Marcia, Latus, and Eclectus saw her name at the top, they chose to do something. They planned to kill Commodus to get away with it and make Pertinax ruler instead. Marcia put poison in Commodus's wine, which she gave him after taking a bath. Although Commodus got very sick and threw up, the plotters paid Narcissus, a wrestler, and Commodus's teacher, to strangle him to make sure he would die. Rome was in chaos after Commodus's death, with 4 rulers taking power very quickly. Pertinax took over and tried to keep